47 is on the move. Right now, President Trump is on board Air Force One. He's headed to wildfire-ravaged Los Angeles, where Governor Gavin Newsom is expected to show up uninvited. Trump spending his afternoon touring Hurricane Helene damage in Asheville, North Carolina, consoling a community there that really feels forgotten, while making a ton of news, including this moment when he mulled signing an executive order to get rid of FEMA. Here's why.
I'll also be signing an executive order to begin the process of fundamentally reforming and overhauling FEMA, or maybe getting rid of FEMA. I think, frankly, FEMA is not good. FEMA gets here and they don't know the area. They've never been to the area, and they want to give you rules that you've never heard about. They want to bring people that aren't as good as the people you already have. And FEMA's turned out to be a disaster.
And while we await the president's arrival in Los Angeles, Governor Newsom and L.A. Mayor Karen Bass were told will be there on the tarmac when the president lands. Now, it's no secret that Newsom and Trump have disagreed over how to battle the wildfires that have ravaged the area. Earlier, the president laying out his expectations for the visit.
I want to see two things in Los Angeles: voter ID, so that the people have a chance to vote, and I want to see the water be released and come down into Los Angeles and throughout the state. Those are the two things. After that, I will be the greatest president that California has ever seen.
And here is what Governor Newsom had to say about the president.
I'm grateful, though, that he took our invitation to heart and that he will be here tomorrow. It's my understanding. I look forward to being there on the tarmac to thank the president, welcome him, and we're making sure that all the resources he needs for a successful briefing are provided to him.
Okay, so my first question was, when I thought about Newsom and Bass being on the tarmac, did they not see, Judge, his conversation with the leaders at Davos? He was pretty direct about how he felt about how things were going on the stage, international stage, but he's going to be face-to-face with these guys in California.
Oh, yeah, he's going to tell them exactly what he thinks. And, you know, I find it fascinating that Newsom is trying to be the guy in charge. You know, I'm the one who invited him. He took me up on my offer, as if the president needs to be invited anywhere. I mean, this is a clear disaster area that continues to be a disaster area. But, you know, Newsom knows that his future relies on this. And it's riding on these fires, how he handles them. I don't think he's doing so well. And I think the passage of time is only making it worse when they get back to their homes and realize they've got to start from scratch. And, you know, in his first term, President Trump told Newsom that he's got to clean up the forest. And in his first term, President Trump, who's got 50 states to worry about, is prescient enough to say, Newsom, you've got to get the water from Northern California, from the mountains, the rivers, the streams, the snow melt, and not send it out to the Pacific, but send it to Southern California. I mean, you know, this president has been so prescient about the issue of immigration and how much trouble would be in not vetting these people, having an open border. Now America's with him on that. He was prescient about this. And we're talking about, what, 8 years ago? So, you know, Newsom and Bass and all the rest of them can get out there and make like they're doing their job. They're not. But when we saw President Trump in California, he was doing what people want their president to do. They want their president to show up, to talk to ordinary people, to find out what the problem is, how we can fix it, take down the name of the insurance company that isn't giving them the money. How can they be expected to rebuild if they have no money? They can't get their hands on the FEMA money. And the president is doing this all in front of us. He's accountable. He's transparent. He's what we need. And by the way, do you remember Palestine? With all the problems in Palestine? I mean, FEMA's messed that up, too. It should go, and I guarantee you he's going to take it apart.
Well, the people of that train derailment in Ohio were waiting for months and months and months. Every time it sounded like the White House was going to arrange a visit there, President Biden didn't go. Harold, President Trump, even when he wasn't president, has made a name for showing up to some of these places. He did in Georgia as well after Helene, while he was on the campaign trail. And I got to say, hearing from those people today was really heartbreaking, and it was powerful.
There's no doubt. It's good to be with you this afternoon. It is, as I tried to share yesterday, President Trump is a different kind of president. There's a lack of conventionality to him. There's a lack of orthodoxy to him that is really good in some ways. And I think part of what he said today, I couldn't agree with more. I don't know if I would get rid of FEMA, but what I interpret him saying is he wants to reform FEMA. When you think about it, the whole organization, FEMA, is organized around responding to something that's gone really bad. So you would think that you would have, and I'm sure they do, but it doesn't seem like they always are prepared. You would have people who know different regions of the country, different terrains in the country, the kinds of things that could afflict different parts of the country, and they could assemble those teams locally to be able to help them better. It was heartbreaking to see months after what happened in North Carolina. I listened to some of those families who are still living day to day, who are still living in conditions and circumstances that you wouldn't think in America we'd be living in. So I hope the president, I know sometimes he gets worked up into politics and can get a little momentum behind him and he'll say some things. But I think what he said initially about FEMA and reforming is the right thing. Where I differ with him a little bit, Shannon, is the notion of conditionality around helping Americans who happen to be in a state where the president's political party is not in charge. Can you imagine if a Democratic president went to a southern or Midwestern state after a disaster and said, look, I'm going to give you all the things you need if you change your voter laws? I get the president wanting to make recommendations about political changes, but politicians should never put their interests in front of people's interests, even if the politics in that state is to their liking or to their chagrin. We are all Americans, and those people suffering in North Carolina, again, I think it was so great we carried it like we did on this network, because I don't think people fully appreciate that they're still living that way months after all this happened. So I applaud the president in a huge way on the reforms and in the right talk about what he wants to do in making FEMA work better, but let's not condition the relief on politics.
Well, Jesse, how does Newsom play this? I don't know that he has a lot of leverage in this situation, but he says he's going to show up and be there. Is it super awkward, or are these guys sort of frenemies and they work through it today?
Frenemies. At first, someone said it was like he was streaking in the quad, and then he turned around and no one was following him.
Right.
Because the resistance armies disappeared. So now when he was inaugurated, they had the flags lowered for Carter. He raised them, and that was a big symbol that he wanted to play ball. Now, he can show up at the tarmac, and he can either be Chris Christie or Jan Brewer. Remember Brewer in Arizona with the finger point? And then there was Christie, open arms. A lot of people in his party didn't like that. He has to do something. And I disagree with Harold. You have to condition this. It's like car insurance, Harold. If you keep wrecking your vehicle, the insurance company's not just going to keep paying the claims. They're going to make you take a defensive driving course. Just like California has to do. They have to start managing their state better and do all the things Janine said. Now, I wouldn't link it to voter ID.
That's what I meant.
I would link it to getting prepared with your water and your reservoirs and your forest management. But by the way, Harold, aren't they still counting votes in California?
And Pennsylvania.
They're still counting votes.
We've got a race call to make. Right now.
But they do need to reform FEMA, and that's not a partisan issue.
I agree with
the
you.
last four FEMA heads, 2 Dems, 2 Republicans, all say it needs to be overhauled because these states aren't prepared, and then they get bad bailouts because FEMA's not prepared. So they need some sort of disaster deductible to straighten it out.
Greg, I feel the Sharpie. I hear it moving fast and furious over here. I'm getting a little high off of the fumes.
Oh,
Tell us what you've written.
Evil Shannon Bream. Just stepping back, I just feel like, are there any politicians or political parties left? Like, I feel as though Trump has flooded the zone. He's disappeared Democrats from the game board, but also any kind of like never Trumpy Republican. Do they still exist? I don't think there's been any Republican president that's had a week like this. I don't remember it. The party has never been this effective or successful in my lifetime. I mean, maybe over time it happens, but you can't have a better week than this. And a lot of this stuff that he's doing, you know, in the executive orders, but also here, is a layup because the solutions were always there. It's just that the Dems refused to accept them. It was a failure not just of common sense, but also a failure of will. No one is having any issue with what Trump is doing. They just didn't know it wasn't being done. They didn't know what they were missing, including in disasters. This is a contrast between an actual president and a cardboard prop. You know, Trump is aware of what's going on the ground. He actually listens to people. And if you tell him something, he's going to do something about it. For some reason, he's engaged, whether it's in crime, he'll talk to victims. With immigration, he'll talk to border agents. He talks to people in AI. He seems to get a grasp of almost every issue by talking to the people involved. But if you were in a disaster or a catastrophe, if you were a victim, and you went on any network and you were pleading, it would never get to Biden. Either he couldn't hear it or he wouldn't do anything about it. And when you watch Trump act, signing all these executive orders and attacking every problem, you don't just see his effectiveness, you realize what was missing. A leader. We had 4 years without a leader, and now we're acting like, wow, this feels pretty good. It's like having you suddenly you're like, oh, now I know what this is like. This is how it works. Pretty good.
Well, and now hearing from members of Congress, cabinet secretaries, all kinds of people who said they couldn't get to President Biden for these conversations.
Yes.
It does feel abruptly different. Okay.
I don't think that comment was necessary, but okay.
But I wanted to give you a little backup because you needed it.
But I didn't need the backup.
You
Shannon.
did, but I vote
fine.
you needed it.
Click here to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page to catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis. You won't get it anywhere else.